Yeah, I've had a comment about Randy Rhoads sounds that I've been producing. Well, we have this problem where the general public is being forced by the internet to educate yourselves a bit more. So it's got nothing to do with me. But you've got to realise that the internet is going to change you into a completely different person. Now, when I play the Randy Rhoads sound, I'm not trying to reproduce the studio sound. I'm not trying to reproduce the after hours TV sound. Yeah, the Randy Rhoads sound was disowned decades ago, right? Everyone associated with it moved on to different stuff. So the fact that we can recreate it 40 years later is absurd. And people still claim ownership of these things. The sound was created once and it's gone, right? So I don't try to reproduce the original sound because I don't have multiple amplifiers, I don't have multiple quad boxes, I don't have studios, I don't have television studios, I don't have football stadiums to reproduce the original sound. As a listener, you should be familiar with JMP, metal face Marshall amplifiers, non-master volume without a gain knob, essentially. You should be familiar with it, and the internet is going to force you to become familiar with it. In the next 10, 20 years, you're going to be forced to deal with it. But that's because you watch the internet. So you can either hide away from the internet or the internet will force you to become a better person, a more intense listener. So you should be familiar with the standard channels. You should be familiar with the sound of those two channels. You shouldn't be familiar with those two, because that's the modified circuit that only Randy Rhoads got from the studio. And there's going to be a lot of shithead idiots that talk, oh, I've got the same fucking sound. Oh, all bullshit. There's so much bullshit comes out of humans' mouths. They're famous worldwide. So yeah, you should be familiar with the sound out of that amplifier there. And then you should be familiar with the sound of everywhere on this dial. It's not acceptable that you're not familiar with these sounds from this position all the way around to that position. You should be familiar with all of those sounds. So when you hear a sound that's at this setting, you should be familiar with the difference between that and that. You should be familiar with those sounds already. It's been 40 years and nobody's familiar with any of these sounds. So they keep asking me questions, and I'm not related to any of this stuff. I'm just an owner. And as Wikipedia keeps deleting my comments, but they delete comments from owners of the equipment, which is ludicrous behaviour. Wikipedia is ludicrous, deleting owners' comments about these products. Either the products were sold to the public or the products weren't sold to the public. So Wikipedia is lunacy. Just approach Wikipedia as if everything you read is wrong, because most of the time it is wrong. So yeah, if I turn the sound up from about there to there, this recording microphone won't record the sound properly. The amplifier will just blast the microphone and you won't get a recording to listen to. So yeah, we have a reasons for setting the amplifier down so that you can hear the recording. Otherwise, if I set it up here, it's just going to blast the whole room. The microphone can't handle volumes that loud. So it's up to you to do your own research and to be familiar with the sounds of JMP Marshall amplifiers from 1980. So the internet is going to force you to become a completely different person. But now you've got a sound from this equipment right here, and it's not the after hours sound, it's not the studio sound. Those sounds have been processed through lots of other things. So now you've got a bass sound, a source which will provide you with context to the original sound. So when you hear mine, this is the bass version of this sound, the basic version. So it's up to you in your mind, in your brain, to listen to the after hours recording, and then it should put the after hours recording into some kind of context, because at the moment after hours has had zero context out there in the world. Not one other player has made a Randy Rhoads type of sound to give a reference and put into context the original sound. So now you have one basic sound which puts into context the double or triple amplifier full stack sound. So now you've got no excuse to complain that Randy's after hours sound was quiet, because my sound clearly demonstrates that Randy's amplifier was turned up in volume. It has huge bass, even though it doesn't seem that it has huge bass, but now that my sound puts into context his sound, you can clearly hear the after hours sound has huge bass, it has lots of gain, it's got huge gain coming from the amplifier as well as the pedals. Whereas my sound only has a tiny bit of amplifier distortion, because the volume knob was not turned up, way up. If I turned it way up, yes, it would sound way more distorted, but it still doesn't have the sound of 4 quad boxes or the tribute sound, which has 6 quad boxes. I'm only playing through 1 quad box, so. But the original sound needed another sound to provide context to the original sound. So finally, after 40 years, we now have one sound that puts into context the original sound. But there's been 0 guitars for Randy Rhoads that have been sold in Australia in the last 40 years. So I shouldn't even have any Randy Rhoads sounds, you know. Industry has tried to destroy everything to do with Randy Rhoads every year for the last 40 years. You should be attacking retail and wholesale for preventing all sales of Randy Rhoads guitars in Australia. Not one Randy Rhoads Les Paul has been ever sold in Australia. Not one Concorde, not one Carl Sandoval Flying V. None of them have ever been sold in 40 years in Australia. What a ridiculous business model this Randy Rhoads brand has been going through for the last 40 years. It's effectively been destroyed before it's even been created. And the people who sold me this amp, they stole all the valves out of the amplifier before I got it home. So you should get those employees and owners of that company and you should throw them all in jail. But you lazy people don't do that. Fortunately, that company's been destroyed and has been dissolved. But those workers and owners have gone on to other music stores in Australia. And years ago, the same company that sold me this amplifier stole all the valves out of this amplifier while it was still sitting in the store before I got it home. And I'm not the only customer of Marshall that's had all of their valves, all of their Marshall valves stolen out of their amplifiers at the retail store. I bought these amplifiers 10 years apart and the same criminal trick was done on both of those amplifiers. So you can guarantee that every Marshall that came out of Music Junction company, every valve was stolen out of those amplifiers as well. So it's no wonder that the Marshall brand collapsed in Australia and has resulted in almost no sales. It should actually have disappeared completely out of Australia because of their bad reputation. Terrible, zero customer service, zero customer satisfaction. But I looked past all of that rubbish and because I bought this white Marshall amplifier. But now the listener is going to be educated by the internet.